Incredible Waitress exposes shocking fraud. How one call transformed a CEO's future forever. Emily stood behind the counter of the Maple Tree Diner, her coffee-stained apron clinging to her with the familiarity of years. The bustling of plates and the chatter of regulars were a symphony she had learned to tune in and out, like a maxed-out radio, a comforting noise in her small town of Cedar Hill. She poured coffee into chipped mugs with a practiced ease. But as the sun sank low, something heavier than the usual exhaustion began to settle in her chest. The phone rang, slicing through the ambience, and when she answered, it was the last voice she expected. Her father, he had been a giant in a suit, once. Now he was just a shadow of that man, a former CEO who had lost more than his position. He had lost his standing among people, too. His trembling voice was filled with an urgency that made Emily's stomach churn. "Emily, you need to listen to me. Tom S. involved in something dark. I'm not sure if it's fraud, but it's worse than I imagined." Each word was like an anchor, dragging her deeper into uncertainty. She felt torn, her instinct to protect her family clashing with a nascent need for truth. What if her father was wrong? What if someone she had revered all her life was turning everything they ever built into dust? The very thought clenched her stomach in knots. She had often daydreamed about leaving this town, pursuing a different life, perhaps even a career that mattered more than a diner apron. But now, standing there, her hands gripping the phone, she questioned her own legacy. Did she defend her father and risk becoming an accomplice in deceit? Or did she pursue a path fraught with uncomfortable risks, a path that could shake her family's very foundation? As whispers filled the diner with concern, she sensed the growing suspicion in the air. The townsfolk viewed Tom as a pillar of Cedar Hill, and they cherished the facade he had built, an illusion she could now feel crumbling. Each smile she offered Max and Lily at the breakfast table became heavier with the weight of her impending decision. Didn't he deserve to be caught up in her father's mess? It was one thing to worry about how she kept the bills paid. Now, she had to consider their future beyond the diner's four walls. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days slipped away, and with them her sense of clarity. The diner became a battleground for her thoughts, each order filled with voices that now felt suffocating. She felt the despair of her neighbors who were struggling to keep their heads above water, their dreams dimming with every news headline. They were the ones who could be crushed under the weight of Tom's greed if her father's former protege was indeed selling out the heart of Cedar Hill. She became a detective in her own right, piecing together whispers and hidden truths like a jigsaw puzzle, with her heart racing at each revelation. But the deeper she delved, the more she feared. What if she was wrong? What if this turned back on her, and it was her father's legacy that ruined her future? As the tension built, a familiar face entered the diner, but the conversation came to an abrupt halt as he approached her. It was Tom, and he wanted to talk. Anxiety clawed at her insides. Would this be the moment her life took a different course? Would she find the strength to confront him, to unearth the truth, or would she falter, allowing her father's words to keep her silent? She took a deep breath, grasping at whatever remained of her resolve. All she knew was one thing. Cedar Hill would never be the same again. The diner, once a sanctuary of familiar faces and routine, now felt like a stage set for confrontation. With each step Tom took toward her, Emily's heart raced, each thud echoing her growing trepidation. She had spent countless hours crafting both a persona and a life nestled within the walls of Maple Tree Diner, feeling secure in her role. Yet now, everything was in question. "Emily, we need to talk," Tom said, his voice smooth but laden with an undertone that suggested he was anything but calm. It was authoritative yet devoid of the warmth she had always instinctively associated with him. Still holding the coffee pot, she steadied herself, unsure if it was to offer him a cup or as a means to ground her wavering resolve. About what? She managed, forcing her voice steadier than she felt. She could feel the eyes of the customers on them, each gaze a silent witness to the impending exchange. Tom glanced around, and she noticed the minute change in his demeanor. A flash of annoyance crossed his face when he realized the stakes of their setting. Not here. Can we step outside? Minutes felt like hours as her instincts wrestled with curiosity and fear. Every beat of her heart seemed to underscore the gravity of what might unfold. With a slow nod, she placed the coffee pot down and followed him outside, where the cool evening air offered a stark contrast to the heated conversations inside. "Emily, I know you've been hearing things," he began, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Rumors about the company. You don't want to get involved in this mess." She felt a flare of defiance. "What kind of mess, Tom? My father just told me your father is confused. He is not thinking straight since, well, you know." His words dripped with a kind of pity she despised, yet also made her question if there was any truth in them. The business world is brutal. It's easy to misunderstand events that, when looked at from a different angle, are entirely innocent. Emily narrowed her eyes. "Innocent? So you're saying the verbal abuse, questionable financial dealings, that's all innocent?" Tom's expression shifted, surprise cutting deeper than any words could. "You're too young to understand the complexities of this environment. Sometimes, sacrifices are necessary for the greater good." Her stomach churned. "You mean betraying people like my father? Like the townspeople who rely on what you're doing?" "Emily," he said calmly, but she could see the anxiety skirting his poise. "You need to look at this strategically. Business is not personal. That's where you're wrong." "It was personal for my dad," she shot back, her own subconscious growing bolder. "And it's personal to me. Cedar Hill is more than just your profits." For a moment, silence stretched between them, the weight of her words palpable in the air. It was as if the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She had moved from the comfort of ignorance to a stance of vigilant awareness. Tom was still composed, but she saw the cracks forming. This man she once admired was showing signs of vulnerability. Perhaps her instincts were right after all. The burden of her father's faith in her and the recurring voices in the diner had ignited a spark deep within her. "I will find out the truth," she said, firming her resolve, "whether you like it or not." As she turned to leave, she felt the rush of newfound determination surging through her. There was no turning back now. She was on the precipice of change, and her investigation had only just begun. With a swift glance over her shoulder, she caught a glimpse of Tom's expression, one of disbelief and a shadow of fear. What lay ahead might not only shake the roots of Cedar Hill, but also demand that Emily confront not just Tom's choices, but her own emerging identity, a balance between daughter and detective, between fear and fortitude. As she stepped back into the diner's warmth, determination crystallizing within her, Emily was prepared to dismantle the lies and perhaps, in the midst of chaos, discover who she was meant to be. In that moment, something stirred within her, a whisper of courage urging her to pursue the unseen. It was time, she realized, to confront not only those leaving devastation in their wake, but also to face the very values that had shaped her life thus far. Would she find allies in her quest for truth, or would the very people she sought to protect turn against her? The air in the diner felt different as Emily returned, electric with the weight of her decision. She could sense the bustling activity around her, but was momentarily detached, a stranger in her own world. The conversations flowed past her like water over rocks, the casual chatter now incongruent with the storm brewing in her mind. Each voice rang familiar, the laughter bright, yet there was a new layer of tension in her chest, tightening with the knowledge of what was at stake. The clatter of dishes and the hiss of the coffee machine faded into background noise as she returned to her work, serving tables but thinking of the weighty conversation outside. Were these people, her customers and friends, aware of the peril lurking just beneath the surface? The dissonance made her feel isolated, A fortress of secrets not yet revealed that a few tables away, Mrs. Green was recounting her life story to anyone who would listen. A comforting sound, yet Emily felt a surge of urgency. She tucked the coffee pot under her arm and approached, forcing a smile onto her face. The small talk came out mechanically as she refilled cups. "Thanks, dear," Mrs. Green said, her eyes sparkling with the remnants of nostalgia. "How's your father? He's still spinning those old tales." As the question hung in the air, Emily hesitated. How could she respond when the tales might be masked by deceit? "He busy," she replied, deflecting. The tightness in her stomach twisted further. She left the table and moved to the back of the diner, where she could breathe for a moment alone. The choice lay heavy on her shoulders: to dive into the murky waters of corporate dishonesty and protect what mattered most, or to turn away into the safety of her routine. Pulling out her phone, she stared at her contact list, fingers hovering over names. Each one represented a decision, some that would repudiate her father and others that could risk losing her hometown's trust. Would facing Tom mean losing her father, or losing herself in a crusade that might throw her life into disarray? With clenched fists, she resolved to reach out to Ben, a childhood friend whose father had ventured into business before retiring. For a moment, doubts washed over her. Was she ready to channel her newly found fortitude into something so tangible and potentially dangerous? "Hey, Emily, you all right?" Ben's voice crackled over the line, pulling her from her thoughts. It was an unexpected kindness, rekindling a sliver of hope. "Can we meet? I need some advice," she said, surprise tinging her own voice with urgency. She barely recognized it as her own. "Of course. How about the park?" he suggested. The park was safe and familiar in stark contrast to her current reality. "I'll see you soon," she replied before hanging up, her heart racing with anticipation and apprehension alike. She reclaimed her position on the diner floor. She sensed eyes on her curiosity, mixed with concern among familiar faces. They watched her as if awaiting a performance that only she knew was unfolding behind scenes. But beneath the surface of their inquisitive glances, she discovered an unexpected strength. Her role as a waitress was no longer simply about serving coffee and pie. It was about keeping a pulse on her community, and now, more than ever, she felt determination nudge her deeper into the very heart of Cedar Hill. Could she become more than just a bystander in the unfolding story of deceit? This newfound mission grew roots within her as she maneuvered through the diner's rhythm, the fabric of her identity weaving tighter around her decisions. There was so much more to Emily than what she had ever believed. As dusk descended upon Cedar Hill, her heart raced not just from anxiety, but exhilaration for what lay ahead. The truth felt closer than it ever had before, yet veiled, hiding in shadows that she was now intent on illuminating. Would her quest for clarity expose truths she wasn't prepared to confront, or would it forge connections that could redefine her relationship to her father and her community? The urge to know gnawed at her as she prepared to untangle the complexities veiling her father's legacy. The weight of choice loomed. It was time to step out of the shadows and into the light. But first, the meeting with Ben awaited, where the next piece of the puzzle might just reveal her greatest challenge yet. Emily stepped into the park, the chill of the evening air wrapping around her like a cold blanket. The familiar sights, the rustling leaves, the distant laughter of children should have been comforting, yet everything felt altered, imbued with the weight of her impending conversation with Ben. She spotted him seated on a weathered bench, hands stuffed in his pockets, looking earnest. Taking a deep breath, she approached, her mind churning with possibilities. How would she phrase her revelations? Would he understand the treachery she felt was more than personal? This was about her father, her community, a web she had only just begun to consider. "Hey, Emily," Ben greeted, standing to give her a quick hug. "You look a bit stressed. What is going on?" "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She fidgeted with a loose strand of hair, a physical manifestation of her nerves. "I've been thinking about my dad and some things he's involved in. I don't know how to approach it." "Tell me everything," he urged, settling back on the bench as she slid next to him, their shoulders just brushing a reminder of their long-shared history. All right. She hesitated, then plunged into her thoughts. He is part of a company that they've been stretching the truth, hiding things from investors, and now I feel like if I confront him, I could destroy everything we have. But if I don't, I'm complicit in something that could really hurt people. Ben furrowed his brow, absorbing her words. That is huge, Emily. But have you thought about what ignoring it could do to you? To your values? She nodded slowly, regret pulsing through her. I wish I could pretend it's not happening. Sometimes ignorance feels like safety, but I can't shake the need to unearth the truth. There has to be a way to hold him accountable without tearing down our family. Sensing her conflict, Ben leaned closer, his voice firm yet compassionate. You have a voice, Emily. You know your capability. Maybe confronting him isn't destruction. Maybe it's the foundation for an honest future. But it's scary. It's all on you. The truth of his words crept in, igniting something within her. Strength she and T fully recognized. Facing her father seemed monumental, but more so was the weight of the secret lurking in her heart. It was time to transition from a life defined by fear to one emboldened by integrity. Ben, I need to do this, she said, clutching his arm with a newfound resolve. I need to know who I am, what I stand for. If I stay silent, I'll lose myself. The gravity of that conviction electrified the atmosphere. For the first time, the decisions ahead felt less like burdens and more like a stepping stone toward fulfillment. But doubts lingered, a cacophony that still echoed behind her newfound clarity. Then what's the plan? Ben asked, tilting his head thoughtfully. I'll confront him, she asserted, her heart racing. Yet a sense of calm flooded in this was the pathway to her empowerment, a journey she had to undertake alone. But I need to gather more information first. I have to be strategic, not impulsive. Do you want help? I can dig around, see what I can find. No, she replied, determination flooding her voice. This is my battle, but just having you here, knowing I have support, that's everything to me. As they sat in silence, the crisp air around them felt charged, alive with the unquiet whisper of her growing courage. She could see a path illuminated ahead, although shadowy and uncertain. The trust of her town, the truth of her father's actions, and possibly countless lives hung in the balance. Just remember, Emily, Ben said, breaking the stillness. Whatever comes, you're not alone. His words placed a solid anchor in her tumultuous sea of emotions. Yet, was she truly prepared for the storm that awaited? Just yesterday, her heart raced over mundane orders. Now, she was preparing to confront the essence of her identity. The park, once a sanctuary, had transformed into a staging ground for something larger, the beginning of a demand for truth embedded in her soul. As night settled and stars emerged, she wondered how much she was willing to gamble for certainty. Would she find the revelation she sought, or would the answers thrust her deeper into chaos? The moment had arrived for her to walk away from the shadows and step onto a path that could very well redefine her family, her values, and the fabric of Cedar Hill itself. But could the confrontation with her father unravel the deceit, or would it tighten the bonds of untruth even more? The stakes had never been higher. As Emily returned home that evening, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The familiar surroundings of her childhood felt foreign, shadows lurking behind the curtains and creaking in the floorboards. Each step echoed, not just in the empty hallway, but also through her conscious choices leading her to this moment. She was on the cusp of confronting her father, and that realization felt weightier than any burden she had ever carried. Sitting at the kitchen table, she absently traced her fingers over the wooden surface, her thoughts racing. What if her father denied everything? What if he didn't understand? In preparation, she gathered scraps of paper notes, articles, and snippets of email she had pieced together in her investigation. They were not just documents, but tangible representations of her resolve. Hours merged into one another as she organized this information, highlighting vital points that could support her case. But even as she prepared, a part of her was still wrestling with doubt. Deep down, the haunting idea that confronting her father could ruin their relationship clawed at her resolve. What did it mean to stand for truth if it meant sacrificing trust? The thought twisted and clenched inside her like a vice, propelling her back to the conversation with Ben. Have you thought about what ignoring it could do to you? His words kept replaying in her mind. They ignited a spark, illuminating that despite the fear, the urge to act was not motivated by malice, but by the hope of changing the narrative of her family's legacy. She wasn't merely exposing deceit. She was striving for a future rooted in honesty and integrity. Determined to get clarity, she decided to craft a single solid statement for her confrontation. It took her a long hour, but she finally scrawled down her intentions. Dad, I need to talk to you about the company. I think we're not being honest, and I don't want to be part of a lie anymore. The words felt heavy, yet liberating, like a weight lifted from her chest. The next day was too quiet, the hum of life outside contrasting sharply with the intensity of her internal struggle. Emily coasted through work, her hands moving mechanically, but her mind was far away. Each table she served felt like a rehearsal for a dialogue that loomed over her like a dark cloud. Customers' orders and jovial chats faded into a distant murmur. Instead, she was fixated on her father's reaction. Would he listen? Would he understand the complexity of the truths she had unearthed? As evening approached, her nerves began to amplify. The phone call she received during the day felt deceitful compared to the impending disclosure she had to deliver. Did any of her co-workers sense the tumult within her? They often talk about her as a reliable employee, someone who rarely faltered under pressure. Yet, she felt more like a facade, a performance designed to keep everyone around her comfortable while she spiraled in turmoil. Before she knew it, the clock struck dinner time. Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. She found herself replaying her father's familiar routine, the way he would laugh heartily at their familial jokes, his calm demeanor that could soothe any tension. Yet in that softness, she recognized the shadows of his professional life, the darkness beneath his laughter. Sitting at the table, she could feel the air thick with electric anticipation. Would he see the earnestness in her eyes? Would confrontation stir in him a hint of recognition, an acknowledgement that their truth could no longer be confined within the walls of their home? As her father entered, she braced herself against the impending wave of emotion. Dad, can we talk? The simple words tumbled out, carrying in them the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears and hopes. She felt the room shift, the atmosphere vibrating with unaddressed truths. Of course, he replied, his brow furrowing in concern. He settled into his chair, and for a fleeting moment, Emily allowed herself to picture a bridge being built from the past into a future of clarity and accountability. The storm within her began to calm in the gravity of the moment. Yet, as she formulated her next words, the lurking possibility of rejection felt like a shadow creeping closer. Was she ready to carve a new reality from the remains of her father's decisions? The path lay open before her. A door divided truth from deceit, and she stood at its threshold, both terrified and exhilarated. But could she hold her own in this dialogue, ensuring the integrity of their relationship endured the trials ahead? With a steadying breath, she prepared to dismantle the walls. But as her voice caught, her resolve faltered. Was she truly prepared to face the deceit that had constructed their lives? Emily took a moment, her heart racing, as her father's expectant gaze lingered on her. The familiar comfort of that gaze now felt foreign, each second stretching into eternity. The emotional stakes clawed at her resolve, leaving her teetering between the desire for truth and the instinct for self-preservation. What if he stood firm in silence, rejecting her need for honesty? Dad, she started, the simple address falling like a stone. Her voice wavered as the words tangled in her throat, each syllable a tighter knot of apprehension. I've been looking into the business, what has been going on. The statement hung in the air, laden with all the unsaid accusations and hidden fears. She pressed on, her will rising against the tidal wave of self-doubt. I need to talk about the recent financial discrepancies. He shifted in his seat, the figure of her father, once a pillar of strength, now appearing diminished, vulnerable. What discrepancies, Emily? His tone was steady, but she sensed the tremor beneath. This was it. No more hiding, no more skirting around the truth. I've seen the emails, the reports. This isn't just about profit margins or bad investments. It's about integrity, Dad. Each word gained solidity, grounding her determination. It's not just the money, but what that money represents. How can we live with ourselves if we ignore the truth? The tension crackled in the air between them, unearthing years of unspoken complications. Emily's heart pounded, but with each breath, the urgency within her grew stronger. She couldn't let her personal fears stifle the undeniable truth. Her father's brow furrowed deeper, anxiety etched on his face. Are you sure about this, Emily? You're talking about a lot more than numbers. This could mean serious implications for the whole family. As she opened her mouth to respond, a surge of confidence washed over her. No, Dad. It's about accountability. I want us to be a family that stands on the right side of the truth. I can't ignore what I found, and I can't pretend everything is fine. I want to let our legacy be built on lies. In that moment, she realized her fear had transformed into a weapon, aimed not to harm, but to protect the integrity she cherished. She was no longer the timid daughter waiting for approval. She was a force of change, ready to confront not only her father, but the implications of decades of deceit. Her father sat in silence, absorbing her words. The weight of his character seemed to fold in on itself. She watched as the walls around him instinctively fortified, yet there was an almost imperceptible shift within him. The ultimate recognition of choice began to flicker in his eyes. The old dance of evasion was visible, and she knew he could still choose to step backward into denial. Emily, this is a lot to process, he finally whispered, his voice thick with emotion. She'd seen that look of doubt before, the way it often settled in when he felt cornered. Maybe, but burying our heads in the sand won't fix it either, she pressed gently, her resolve firm despite the storm of uncertainty swirling within her. We have to be honest. I believe in this family, in our potential to create something genuinely good, but not like this. For a heartbeat, they shared a moment where conflict met connection, the tension rising to a crescendo. He remained quiet, his thoughts clearly racing, eyes shimmering with the weight of what she had laid bare. Was he reflecting on the legacy they shared, one fraught with doubt and shadows? Or was he still tethered to the comforts of deceit? But as the seconds stretched and the impending silence threatened to suffocate, Emily wondered if she could truly bear the cost of this moment. Her identity had been forged through sacrifice, but standing at this precipice felt undeniably different. What would she gain or lose by forcing him to confront the truth? With a slow breath to anchor herself, she steeled her courage. I need you to listen to me, not as your daughter, but as a partner in this business. We can't afford to keep drifting into silence. And as the enormity of her words settled in, a new realization took root within her. This was not just about her father's deceit. It was about her own journey. Who was she if not the daughter? Could she stand resolute in her call for integrity, carving her own place in the legacy they faced? The tension shifted again, but as she awaited his response, Emily's heart raced with a potent mixture of fear and exhilaration. She stood ready, poised to confront all that had bound them, and suddenly felt the ride of the forthcoming revelations ahead. But still, deep inside lingered the question. Was she ready to reshape her identity? With those lingering thoughts, she believed firmly that whatever the outcome, she was ready to carve out her own path. But just as she braced for his reply, the doorbell rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. Perfect timing, or a devastating distraction? Emily's heart skipped a beat as the doorbell shattered the moment. Her pulse quickened, adrenaline sharp in her veins, an electric reminder of the weight of the confrontation she had initiated. Would the interruption provide her father the escape he craved, a moment to retreat into his familiar patterns? Or would it divert them collectively into an acknowledgement that could potentially alter everything? With a quick glance at her father, she noticed his expression flicker from contemplation to mixed surprise and anxiety. He shifted in his seat, positioning himself to stand, clearly wrestling with the impulse to answer the call that could shift the direction of their tense conversation. "Wait," she urged, urgency tinged with desperation. "Don't let this derail us." He hesitated, torn between duty and the confrontation she had laid before him. "Whoever it is can wait. Emily," he said, although his tone suggested more perceived obligation than resolve. "Can they?" She countered sharply, the instinct to reclaim control emerging in her voice. "We can't let anything distract from this. It's too important." There was again her growing assertiveness, a reflection of the courage ignited within her. For the first time since she began this journey, she felt an unfamiliar sense of power surging through her, one that could challenge the status quo, one that could reshape both her identity and her family's legacy. Yet doubt still lingered like a shadow at the edge of her resolve. What if her determination pushed him further away? What if she miscalculated and the prospect of this honest conversation gave way to his need for comfort and control? "Emily, maybe it's a sign," her father murmured, glancing toward the door as if the arrival of an unknown visitor could somehow validate his reluctance. "No," she firmly asserted, grounding herself. "It's not a sign. It's a distraction, and we can't afford that right now. We're at a crucial point, Dad." With a faint flick of her wrist, she gestured for him to stay seated, even though her heart pounded at the possibility of losing traction in this pivotal moment. She felt herself standing on the brink of a personal breakthrough, ready to carve out a place not just in her family's business, but in defining the person she wanted to become. As seconds stretched, her father remained immobile, the tension between them intensifying. Emily wondered whether the moment was slipping away or consolidating into a powerful but unforeseeable reckoning. Finally, he sighed and sank deeper into his chair, shoulders drooping with a mix of acceptance and defeat. "Fine, let us talk." The warmth of relief washed over her, igniting an exhilaration that pushed through the remnants of fear. Here they stood, staring at the precipice of honesty, ready to peer into the depths of their shared history. It felt solidifying the recognition that perhaps he was preparing to unclench the tightly wound facade he had worn for years. "Why now, Emily?" he asked, avoiding eye contact, the question laced with humility and uncertainty. What sparked this sudden need for honesty? She took a heartbeat to reflect. "Isn't it clear? I want to be proud of our family and our work. But we can't have pride if we're built on a foundation of deceit. That essay legacy I refuse to accept any longer." As the vulnerability in her voice touched a hidden part of him, she wondered if this moment would become a defining fracture in their relationship. Would this recognition expand the possibilities of who she could be, not just as his daughter, but as an emerging leader within the business? With renewed resolve, she leaned in. "But we have to do this together, Dad. If we're going to face this, we have to face it honestly." Before he could respond, a muffled voice echoed through the door, a familiar one. Her trepidation mounted again as she recognized it. "Emily, are you in there?" The urgency suddenly multiplied in her chest. It was Beth, her best friend and confidant, a relentless dynamo of energy and insight. Would this surprise visit from Beth be the jolt of clarity that she needed? Or, in an ironic twist, could it distract from the moment she had fought so hard to retain? "Do you think I should let her in?" her father asked, a flicker of uncertainty across his features. Emily's mind raced with possibilities. Beth was always so direct and honest, often unearthing clarity in chaos. "It depends, Dad," she said, feeling the weight of decision pressing down on her. "Is this meeting about our truth, or are we still shielding ourselves behind familiar facades?" With a heartbeat of hesitation, her father nodded slowly, the unspoken acknowledgement revitalizing both of them. Emily could feel the collective energy in the room shift. Something fundamental was changing between them. She could only hope it would propel them into the honest confrontation they so desperately needed. "Let us see what she wants," her father murmured finally, shifting in his seat, but with a readiness that sparked her hope. Yes, she made her way to the door. Emily's mind raced with questions and wonderings. Would this slight deviation instigate deeper revelations? Or would it, by mere coincidence, lead them straight to teachable moments that they couldn't afford to ignore? With every turn of the handle, she knew one thing. The world was about to expand beyond the confines of their current conversation, and within that expansion lay both possibilities and obstacles. With uncertainty twinging at her gut, she opened the door, bracing herself for whatever awaited on the other side. As Emily swung the door open, the warm light from the hallway rushed in, illuminating Beth's already animated expression. "Emily, I had to talk to you. It's urgent." The urgency in Beth's voice pulled Emily away momentarily from the tense mood that had been brewing with her father. "Beth, what is going on?" she replied, her heart pounding with both concern and anticipation. She hesitated for a moment, glancing back towards her father, unsure if this was the right time for an external distraction. There was a battle brewing within her. Should she let this energy in, or was it best to shelter the fragile honesty they had ventured toward? "I found something about the company," Beth rushed, stepping inside and leaving the door ajar, creating a barrier between the security of the world outside and the conflicted atmosphere within. It struck Emily how Beth's enthusiasm contrasted sharply with the palpable tension in the room with her father. "What do you mean?" Emily's voice steadied, changing course. Her instinct told her to listen. "There's this unauthorized transaction linked to some of the recent contracts. It's not just small potatoes either. We're talking about a significant amount of money disappearing, and it's tied to someone pretty close to you." Beth looked at her father, and Emily could see her best friend's energy cascade into concern. Emily felt a vice grip her stomach. "What are you saying?" "The books have discrepancies, things that shouldn't be happening in a well-run business. You need to look at this immediately. You can't let it go." The gravity of the situation crashed over Emily like a wave, each crashing reality reminding her of the risks that had been pooling beneath the surface of the family business. Suddenly, the vulnerability she felt earlier curdled into a sense of looming dread. "Is this about Dad?" she asked, her voice catching. Beth pressed her lips together, clearly weighing her words, but the truth loomed large and unavoidable. "I'm not sure, but it seems like a pattern." Emily turned back to her father, whose expression had tightened. The calm facade he had worn moments before crumbled under the spotlight of Beth's revelation. Should she use this moment to peel back layers, or would it push him right back into his defensive shell? "Dad?" she prompted, the single word hanging between them, heavy with weight. He met her gaze, and for the first time, the glimmer of fear flickered in his eyes. "Emily, I don't know what she is talking about." A pause hung in the air, stretching long enough for Emily to feel the tension weave a complex curtain between them. Instinctually, she could sense his discomfort, the tendrils of anxious energy flaring around him. This deceptive calm was fragile, but was she prepared to dive deeper into the rapidly unfolding chaos? Her mind raced with possibilities. If this was true, it could change everything. The legacy she craved might crumble under the weight of betrayal and deception. "Dad, if there is something wrong, we need to face it together. You taught me to uphold integrity above everything else." She confronted him. "This could be a turning point for us, but we have to be honest now." As she spoke, the realization struck her. This wasn't merely about the business. It was about their relationship, about tearing down the wall of avoidance that had loomed between them for far too long. "Emily," her father's voice shook slightly, and the distraction of Beth appeared to fade from his focus as he wrestled with the implications of her words. "I can explain no more explanations," she cut him off firmly. "If we don't confront this, we might lose everything we've tried to build." With that, a flood of clarity washed over her. This was her moment to shift from the role of daughter to something more the role of partner and leader. But could she bear the consequences that truth could unravel? Beth's intense gaze shifted between them, sensing the gravity of the confrontation settling into place. "We need to investigate this. Together," she said, her voice resolute. Emily took a deep breath, recognizing they were on the brink of uncharted territory. This one moment, this single decision to confront the truth, could define not just her professional path, but reshape her identity altogether. The unsettling thrill of that realization electrified her. What if the truth fractures everything? Her father questioned, a challenge lacing his words. "Then we rebuild it," Emily replied, the fierceness of her determination sparking within her. "But only if we face it together." As uncertainty tangled with courage, Emily stood at the precipice of change, her heart racing, prepared to uncover whatever shadows lay beneath the surface, and then the doorbell rang again, an eerie echo in the tense air, pulling both her and her father back into the contentious present. "What now?" she breathed, an anxious thrill gripping her muscles once more. The urgency seemed insatiable, and the next moment could very well shape their fate. Would it be an ally or another threat? As the doorbell's chime resonated through the anxious silence, Emily felt a surge of adrenaline course through her veins. Every nerve in her body seemed to prick with anticipation. The unexpected interruption demanded her focus, a distraction she wasn't too sure she could afford at this critical moment. Her gaze darted between her father and Beth, both of whom were equally enshrouded in a mix of uncertainty and curiosity. "Should we get that?" Beth asked hesitantly, the urgency still simmering in her voice. Emily swallowed hard, her pulse quickening. "I guess I should." There was a knot in her throat as she turned toward the door, every step feeling like a march toward potential chaos. Each echoing footstep was a reminder of the monumental decisions laid bare before her. Yet, in that moment, she was aware that avoidance would not serve her any longer. With a small exhale, she opened the door, revealing a delivery man holding a package, seemingly oblivious to the tumultuous atmosphere behind her. Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. The man handed the package over as he glanced at Emily curiously, his manner neutral, but his gaze betraying a hint of concern. "Sign here, please," he said, oblivious to the fires brewing within the lively family dynamic just a few feet away. She quickly signed the slip with a shaky hand, her mind spiraling from the task at hand to the precarious situation unfolding in her living room. As she closed the door, the world beyond faded, replaced by the chilling intensity of what lay ahead. Back at the table, Beth had leaned in, her eyebrows knitted in expectation. "So, what was it?" Emily hesitated, caught in the crosshairs of her dual reality. "Just a delivery." She allowed a flicker of uncertainty to creep in. "I thought it might be more significant, like a witness or something." Her father shifted in his chair, the weight of the conversation still thick between them. "We can't keep stalling," he urged, the tremor in his voice belying a deeper concern. "If what Beth claims is true, we need to act now." "Right, but where do we start?" Emily's mind raced with potential avenues for investigation. Should we contact an auditor? Go through the records today? No, her father interjected sharply, his expression tightening. "We can't bring in anyone else yet. Not until we know exactly what we're dealing with. There are risks involved even if it's just appearances." Anger flared within Emily at his unwillingness to involve outsiders. "Dad, you taught me that transparency is key to any business. How can we deal with this alone?" "Because sometimes appearances are just as important as the truth," he shot back, frustration blending with fear. "People will jump to conclusions, and we have to be smart about our next steps." Emily's gut churned as his words sank in. What would it mean to keep this under wraps? It could lead to broader implications, both personally and professionally. But at that moment, all she could think about was the burden of carrying this secret without the supportive tutelage she had always relied on. The unspoken question hung in the air: was her father protecting the company, or was he shackling her to a potential lie? With sudden resolve, she stood tall. "No more secrets. If we're building a legacy, it has to be grounded in honesty." A A moment of silent tension passed, and she noticed Beth nodding in agreement, with an expression of admiration flickering in her eyes. The rebellion ignited something within Emily. She realized that standing her ground could reshape their dynamic, and that was precisely what she needed. "Okay, then we go through the records together," Beth suggested, her voice cutting through the weighty silence. "We can find out where the discrepancies are. If we uncover the truth, then we can confront whoever is responsible." "That's a start," Emily agreed, her mind racing with newfound determination. "But we need to do it discreetly. No one can know about this yet." Her father watched her with an inscrutable expression, the fear in his eyes morphing into something more ambiguous. "Then let us do it. Together." As they settled into action, Emily understood this wasn't simply about salvaging the business. This moment was about reclaiming her narrative both for herself and her family. Each step toward transparency might create a ripple effect that changed not just their legacy, but her understanding of who she was meant to become. Suddenly, Emily felt a weight lift, accompanied by a pulse of clarity. She was no longer just her father's daughter. She was actively shaping her destiny. The thrill of discovery surged within her as they gathered around the dining table. Papers spread out like maps of an uncharted territory demanding exploration. But just as they dove in, another chime of the doorbell sent a fresh ripple of tension through the air. "What now?" she murmured, her heart pounding again, knowing that the next visitor could either ally with their quest for truth or rewrite the course of their journey entirely. As Emily steadied herself for yet another interruption, she felt a rush of conflicting emotions. The constant ringing demanded her attention, yet she was torn between the urgency of uncovering the truth about her father's company and the potential chaos lurking behind the door. She took a deep breath, the weight of the moment pressing down on her as she shared a glance with Beth and her father. Would this be another distraction, or a vital clue in the mystery they were beginning to unravel? "Should I get it?" she asked, her voice steadying as determination flooded through her veins. Her father nodded, a flicker of hope mixed with concern glimmering in his eyes. Emily turned toward the door, reminding herself that this was merely another step on her journey toward clarity. As she pulled the door open, a familiar face greeted her. It was Mr. Johnson, the town's accountant and a longtime family friend. A knowing look rested in his eyes, but there was something strangely urgent in his demeanor. "Emily, I need to talk to you. It's important." "May I come in?" "Of course," she replied, the adrenaline heightening her senses as she stepped aside to let him in. The moment he crossed the threshold, she noticed he was holding a thick folder marked confidential, and an unmistakable tension draped over the air. "Is everything okay, Mr. Johnson?" she asked, her curiosity piqued and heart racing as they all settled in around the dining table. He glanced at her father, then directly at Emily, his expression serious. "Not really. I've been monitoring some discrepancies in the financial records for the company. I didn't want to say anything without concrete evidence, but what I found leads me to believe that there's more to these rumors than just hearsay." With the folder laid open on the table, Emily felt the gravity of Mr. Johnson's words sink in. "What do you mean?" she pressed, leaning in closer. The truth she sought was here, within arm's reach. There are transactions that don't line up, unusual withdrawals, and contracts that lead back to that unauthorized expense Beth mentioned. He explained, his voice low yet firm. "I thought it prudent to share this with you before anyone else gets wind of the situation." Her father stiffened, glancing between Emily and Mr. Johnson. She could see the internal struggle reflected in his eyes, as if he were battling the remnants of denial with the reality now laid bare in front of them. "No more secrets," Emily declared assertively, surprising herself with her confidence. The weight of her decisions was being lifted through this interaction. If this is the truth, then it's time we confront it head-on. Mr. Johnson met her gaze, impressed by her fierce determination. "You're right, Emily. If there is something wrong in the books, we need to proceed with transparency. I'm willing to help." Gratitude flooded through Emily, feeling relief in the support of this trusted figure. She exchanged a meaningful glance with her father, whose expression mirrored a painful recognition of their need for accountability. "Do you think the discrepancies can be cleaned up without it leading to major fallout?" he asked, his voice barely steady. "No agony, no legacy," Emily replied, holding his gaze. She understood the treacherous path ahead was not just a confrontation with their past, but a commitment to redefine their future. As they mapped the way forward, a newfound sense of collaboration flourished in the air. Each member of the group fortified the stability she had long sought. Emily pressed herself into this role as both leader and protector, wielding her resolve like armor to guard their future. "Let us lay out every transaction that doesn't make sense," Emily suggested, excitement threading through her veins. "We can start piecing together the narrative, where the money is intended to go and where it actually went. Then we confront whoever is responsible." With each step they took into this collaborative effort, Emily felt the veil of uncertainty lifting. The act of facing the truth, though frightening, was emboldening her sense of self, marking a critical transformation from passive observer to proactive architect of her destiny. Each discrepancy they outlined became a thread she could weave into a narrative of integrity that could reflect not only on her father's legacy, but also redefine her position within their family story. In that moment, she felt a wave of personal achievement swell within her, a merit awarded not by applause, but forged through authenticity. As they worked late into the night, the gentle thrum of determination fueled them all. Papers scattered on the table, whispers of what next interspersed with relief and shared purpose transformed the atmosphere around them. Finally, after hours of collaboration, they emerged with a plan, a thorough understanding of what lay ahead. It was not just a commitment to accountability. It was the foundation they would build upon for years to come, an ambitious venture enveloped in integrity. "I never would have imagined we'd be here," her father said quietly, pride spilling over in his tone. "You've done more than inspire me today, Emily. You have paved a path that I can only hope to have the strength to follow." The shift was palpable. Recognition pulsed through their connection, attuned with clarity and enriched by growth. For once, father and daughter stood as equals, united in their goals and driven by honesty. The previously dilapidated bond between them was now mending, stronger than it had ever been. With this profound achievement, Emily stepped forward into her newfound identity, a champion of truth, fortified by love, ready to push the boundaries of what she could accomplish. She felt whole, and she was no longer just the daughter of a CEO. She was building her place in the world on her own terms as they reclaimed the narrative of their lives. Emily saw that true success wasn't about climbing to the top on shaky ground. It was about standing firmly on a foundation built by unwavering honesty and courage. And with that, she smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment unlike any she had experienced before. This was the beginning of something extraordinary. Now, if you're captivated by this transformative journey, you need to subscribe now for more exclusive stories of personal overcoming and growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, because it truly makes a difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about Emily's story and her brave choices. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support helps us reach those in need of inspiration.